at the iconic Kumeu River Winery, world famous for its Chardonnays, where three renowned international tasters will critique the 1962 Cellars Brandy, arguably the rarest brandy in the world. The 60-year-old rare brandy is a hidden treasure from the past, where in 1962, 7 pioneering winemakers decided to produce one of the best brandies in the world.
Well, we're going to be tasting a piece of New Zealand vinous history, where a small group of producers back in the early 60s, I mean the decade I was born, experimenting with making brandy in a traditional way, using traditional varieties and techniques, and it's quite I'm really excited to be trying this.
Michael Brajkovic, Master of Wine, Bachelor of Applied Science Enology. Michael Brajkovic studied enology at Roseworthy Agricultural College, now part of the University of Adelaide in South Australia. Part of his studies included the distillation of brandies and their quality features. In 1981, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in enology, that's wine science, as dux of his year, and returned to the family vineyard and winery in Kumeu to take responsibility for wine production. Michael has been a wine and brandy judge in Australia. Lynette Hudson, International Wine and Brandy Consultant. Lynette Hudson holds a postgraduate diploma of winemaking from Lincoln University. For over 25 years, Lynette has a long and varied career as a winemaker in many of the great winemaking regions of the world. She now has her own wine consulting business, offering her services wide and far. Lynette's vast knowledge in enology provides an extensive basis on which to critique wines and brandies of the world. Will Brunel Morvan pursued a career in food and wine after graduating as a chef and sommelier in his native France. Will has worked in many famous 3 Michelin star restaurants throughout France. In 2005, he emigrated to New Zealand with his wife, and in 2008 started a career with Maison Varan in Auckland. Since 2016, Will has become trade director and a shareholder of the business. His experience with French wines and brandies is highly regarded.
Make a start. So here we have this amazing bottle of brandy. Well, we're going to try a brandy that's been produced, as I say, in the early 60s, then aged for a while and in the traditional oak barrels that are used for cognac, for example, and then it's been bottled for a while as well. So it has the advantage of age, which is huge when it comes to spirit. And going to be tasting the spirit quite critically, because we're going to be looking at the spirit in its pure form, neat. It's at 46% alcohol, which is quite strong. So in another glass, we'll be diluting it down to about 20-25%. And that can expose other things because it affects the miscibility of volatile components. When you add water, you reduce the alcohol concentration, and the alcohol is the solvent that keeps all of those things in the liquid form. When you add water, it adjusts that, and a lot of the more oily components, a lot of the aromatic components become less soluble, and so they jump out into the volatile atmosphere above the liquid. We can smell them then. The raw spirit, when it's first made, comes out of the still water white. It absolutely has no colour at all. It's been produced as wine, it's gone into the distillation process, it gets boiled off, and it comes through as a clear liquor. The only place it can get its colour from, in this case, is the barrels. And these are traditional French oak, Limousin oak barrels. And the longer you leave the spirit in the barrel, the more colour and character it extracts from the wood. The other character that it gets very strongly is vanilla, because the alcohol in contact with the wood breaks it down gradually. It breaks the lignin down into its basic components, one of which is vanillin. It's an aromatic aldehyde, which is very important in the character of traditional cognacs, and I'm sure in this particular spirit as well. So it's the time that extracts it. Commercially, a lot of brandy producers, because they have to bring their spirits, their brandies onto the market quite early, will adjust the colour using caramel. And that's a very common practice. But in this case, no caramel's been used. It's all down to the barrel aging. So it's going to be very interesting to see the colour as well. I've never tasted this before. It's very exciting to be able to try it. It's part of our history, and it comes from a time when the predominant wine production in New Zealand was fortified wine. So there was a lot of distillation going on, a lot of spirit being made for fortified wines. The table wine industry was really in its infancy, and people were looking at alternatives for what we were going to do with our grapes. As it ended up, there weren't enough grapes to go around anyway, but it was really interesting that they picked a grape variety, 22A, which is one of the traditional varieties of Armagnac, and then they made it in a brandy style, doing the proper brandy distillation, which is a double distillation using a pot still. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how it's turned out after all this time. My expectations are really high, so I hope I'm not disappointed. The spirit in the bottle doesn't change a lot in the bottle because it has no interaction with the outside atmosphere. And so it's been in there for a while, and it needs to be poured into a glass and just allowed a little bit of time to open up. And we'll have 2 glasses, one neat and one dilute, and you just take your time, allow those to equilibrate really with the atmosphere, come up in temperature a bit, allow the water to dissolve in that diluted sample, and then just allow the vapours of the spirit to fill the glass, because we'll be putting our nose into the glass, and it's a tapered glass specifically to concentrate those aromas, and so you can nose it properly and appreciate what's in the aromas, in the bouquet, in the aromatics of the spirit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour you each a sample. The one on the right we'll call the neat one. The one on the left we're going to dilute with a bit of water. Then the second step is actually tasting. So you're putting it in your mouth. And at 46% alcohol, it can be a bit sharp, a bit strong in alcohol. That's why the diluted sample is very useful, because we can actually taste a lot more from that as well. And as soon as it hits your mouth, it goes from ambient temperature, room temperature, to your body temperature. And so all of a sudden you have all these other volatiles come out of it in your mouth. They go through the nasal passages up into your nose, and they enhance the flavour as well. So it's all a very important part of the tasting process, is actually putting it in your mouth, swirling it around, allowing the flavours to be expressed on your tongue, but also those aromas to go to your nose. And flavour really is a combination of smell and taste. It's not just taste. And then you swallow it, and that's a very important part also of the process, because typically when you're judging a lot of wines or spirits, you spit, because you don't want the alcohol to affect you. In this case, we're only tasting one, so we're going to swallow it. And it's the aftertaste, the effect of that flavour on your palate, and as it goes down your throat as well. It's all part of the experience, and I think part of the enjoyment.
Great intensity, lovely agrume character, with a bit of sweetness up front, but then the alcohol is very round, very smooth. And I find a little bit of caramelized candies in there. Which showing me that it's been aging for a long time. This is definitely a very high quality spirit and distillation.
First of all, I have to say it's an absolute honour and a privilege to taste a brandy that's been distilled in New Zealand and aged in barrel for such a long period of time. And I have to say what I like about it is exactly as Will sort of indicated, that it's a combination of French heritage showing through, but also you see the characteristics of New Zealand, which is very much about, we have a fruitiness, an intensity of fruit that comes through in our wines, and I think that's really showing through here in this brandy. It's a combination of structure, but our exuberant fruit as well.
I wouldn't expect something as high quality. Surprise, yes. Yes. Yeah. Very good indeed.
Well, of course, I was hoping not to be disappointed, and I certainly wasn't disappointed. I've been very impressed. And you really have to take your hat off to the people who made this, because when you think about all the things that could go wrong, this was an experiment. Okay, they actually made some of the base wine from Albany Surprise. That didn't work. That's not a surprise. But with 22A, it is one of the classic grape varieties used in making spirit. So they got that right. They got the fermentation right. Then they got the distillation right, because there are no faults in the spirit at all. Everything's clean. The heart has been taken out. And then to be able to buy some brand new Limousin oak, which is the same oak they use in cognac, and to then age it for that long, without any additions or anything like that, that character has come through as well. And a spirit like this is a distillation of those three characters. It's the wine, it's the grape variety and where it comes from, it's then the distillation and then the aging. And really, it's a third as to what gives you the quality, and it is very high quality.
Again, that combination where you're seeing orange blossom, orange peel, floral aromatics, almost like roasted rosehip, slightly evolved floral characteristics, and that integration with oak, but still such a presence of fruit.
What you first get, as Lynette said, was the oak character, and it really does dominate to start with. But then when you give it time and air, all those other characters, the fruit, the aging complexity, the caramelization which comes from the barrels, but that kind of lemon zest, grapefruit zest, orange zest character, it's pretty awesome and very, very well done. From a single vintage, so very much along the lines of what they do in Armagnac as well, and because of the grape variety, a lot of similarities with Armagnac, but in the same kind of league as what a lot of good cognac is as well. So very impressive.
Well, this is a pretty awesome opportunity to experience such a brandy of this quality coming out of New Zealand. Says there's a lot of potential and you really should try, because variety is the spice of life. You want to have things from all over the world. Never limit yourself.
This is not your everyday brandy. This is something for a very special occasion, something that you might try once or twice in your lifetime, because it's going to be that rare. But it is inspirational and well worth seeking out if you're interested in that type of thing, because it's pretty damn good.
I'm privileged to have been the curator of this precious 1962 7 Cellars Brandy for more than half a century, so that collectors worldwide are able to enjoy an excellent historical artefact. The tasting has confirmed that the vision to produce one of the best brandies in the world 60 years ago by those 7 pioneering New Zealand winemakers has been realised. Watch the next video on another critical tasting held by experts in France, home of great cognacs.